Welcome to episode 20 of the Motor Car Marketing Podcast. I'm Ashley Myers with motorcarmarketing.com. In this episode's main segment, I'm going to be talking with Mike Williams from Black Book. Black Book collects data on the automotive industry and uses that data to power a variety of applications. He's got some really interesting things to say on the used automotive market and offers some great tips for how dealers can potentially make more profit from their used car sales. So stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help us out by giving us a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread the word about the podcast, so they are very much appreciated. If you have any questions or comments about anything, feel free to send us an email at info@motorcarmarketing.com. I want to improve this podcast, so some honest, constructive feedback is always very much appreciated. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mentioned in the podcast can be found on the website in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.motorcarmarketing.com/podcasts. And then just look for episode 20. We recently put together a free guide for car dealers called the Quick Start Auto Dealer Marketing Guide. You can get it by going to motorcarmarketing.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and the lessons will be emailed to you over the course of the next few days. We've tried to concentrate on the high leverage things you can do with each marketing channel so you get the maximum results in the shortest amount of time. We'll be adding more lessons to this guide in the future, but to start out, we'll show you how to increase your ROI and sell more cars on Craigslist, how to quickly set up a Google pay-per-click campaign, how to begin generating leads from local search engine optimization, and how to effectively use email marketing to generate leads and correspond with your past customers. Again, this guide is completely free. Just go to motorcarmarketing.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today, I'll be talking with Mike Williams from Black Book. Here is the interview.
Welcome, Mike, to the Motor Car Marketing Podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
So to start out, I wonder if you can give us a quick overview of your career and how you got into the automotive business.
So I started out at the auction level when I came to the States from Japan in 2001 and got involved with online sales, grew in that role with a former company, and really we went from a good 8,000 units to 80,000 units in a couple of years. So it really showed that there's a lot of opportunity in technology and remarketing. And I really started to feel that was my calling. Started to get into more the analytics side of it, and that eventually brought me over to Black Book. Really, that's a pretty concise statement, but along the way, had the joy of interacting with a lot of the auction industry, a lot of the manufacturers, and across-the-board dealers.
Do you have some sort of a background in statistics? Because it seems like that's kind of, at sort of the core of what Black Book does.
My forte is really with the technology, and we have a great team here at Black Book, headed up by Anil Goyal, doing some amazing work with the statistics. I personally, it's something I've been a part of in the past, but my passion is really the technology and trying to find new ways to leverage it.
Perfect. So I found you after reading an article that you wrote about ways for dealers to sell more pre-owned cars. So let's start out by talking about some specific ways that dealers can earn more from their pre-owned sales. And I think that will segue nicely into what your company does. So first, maybe you can just tell us, where do you see the health of the pre-owned car market right now?
Well, it kind of goes back to the statement of when I started in online. There's a lot of comparisons to the past, the present, and where we're going. I see our current state being almost a resurgence in opportunity, similar to when the internet was, just starting out with dealerships and starting to sell online. We now have a whole different view that's parallel to that in the actual pre-owned inventory and starting to leverage some of that as opportunity. The transparency that we have now, both on the consumer side and the dealer side in wholesale, is something we've never had before to this level. So to really push a retail unit, a new unit, it's getting harder and harder to make the profits that you used to. Whereas, as we went along, cars became scarce on the used side, and that was the biggest challenge. Now we've got leases coming back, I think upwards of 900,000 leases coming back, this year. So now inventory is not a problem. The problem is more matching the inventory with the demand and the location. So I like to say that dealers are more informed than ever, just as customers are, but dealers have an amazing wealth of information at their disposal that I don't know that all of them have realized yet or have utilized.
Yeah. You talk about the transparency and of for buyers on new cars. Do you think that same transparency will eventually catch up to the used market as well, where the buyers will have a better understanding of how much these dealers paid for the cars?
Oh, I definitely. I mean, it goes hand in hand with the notion of how fresh information is and how important that is. Going back to the, 10 years ago, you could get away with having information on values and vehicles that was a month old, whereas now it's changing daily. Sales results are impacting it quickly, and those margins are much thinner than they used to be. So, whoever's got the right information at the right time tends to be the one that's maximizing.
Yeah. So let's talk about just some sort of tips for dealers to increase profits on pre-owned cars. Maybe you could outline a solid strategy for dealers to drive more profit through their pre-owned inventory.
I think it really comes down to which type of dealer, and it does scale, but, you've seen a lot of new car dealers start to get into used space more and more. I think the ones that are utilizing probably some of the best strategies right now, which is, they're identifying what the demand is in a given region that they want to play in, and they're identifying units based on that. One of the biggest tricks is, handling the trade-ins versus acquiring inventory. So in the past, dealers were just left with whatever came in and was traded in. They would try to unload it. They had a time frame that they were working within. And if they couldn't, then they'd send it off to auction and hope to break even on it. Now we're at a point where there are a lot more people looking for those used cars, and the technology is allowing them to reach out and have a wider net. So if I had to outline a strategy per se, the first one is identify the best place to buy the car. In this case, if you're going to auction, know which auctions are hot, which are not. Where can you get that inventory for the best value at that moment? Take advantage of the technology. All of the platforms that are out there now are allowing buyers to access more inventory than ever. And as we used to say, it's a white tourist model. They've gotten very good at describing and giving condition reports on these vehicles. So more times than not, what the description is saying about that car is the real description. So you can have some faith in it. In this case, though, every opportunity and every dealing with somebody that you're acquiring a unit from online is an opportunity of building that relationship and trust the same way dealers used to interact in the lanes. So in this case, as they build up that trust network, they're going to have access to more and more inventory. It becomes a social aspect to the dealer. It's really, again, a new version of the old, where they're meeting up, they're talking, they're cutting deals in the parking lot. In this case, though, this yields the ability to take advantage of some of the virtual inventory, things like that. So I've seen dealers now that will actually, host inventory on their site that's not even theirs yet, with the opportunity to sell it. So some platforms are allowing that already, where you can show inventory to a potential buyer, match them up to a given vehicle, and then behind the scenes take advantage of it with the other dealer and sell it. So the biggest thing you have to keep an eye on, though, those numbers can swing $200, $300 on a given day, depending on how big the sales are on that day. So that cuts into things a lot. Once you have the inventory, you also have to be cognizant of all those related expenses, transportation, sale fees, etc. So having something in hand, that gives you on-the-fly calculations is pretty important.
So what you're talking about is listing cars on your dealer website that you may not have an inventory, but the store across town who you have a relationship with has. Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about maybe services that are pulling these inventories and then you can like draw the inventory out of this database?
No, actually, there are services out there, but you can also have that trade network where you are sharing inventory through services. And you can present inventory, whether it be like an OBE or something like that. There are retail views that you can show vehicles that aren't yours yet. So they have the opportunity to both get the car, but also to sell the car and really lock in a deal before they ever own the car.
So let's talk about, you said, for dealers, to figure out where the best place to buy cars are, let's kind of dig into that and talk specifically about what that means. How do dealers figure out where the best place is? Where are the hot auctions? What are the auctions they should be attending? How can they actually get that information?
Well, I always say, information and opportunity go hand in hand, and planning is number one. In this case, having a tool like a demand index or something that tells you what that days to turn is on a given vehicle goes a long way. So that now you can use those national or regional catalogs to look through, find the price point that you need on the vehicle that matches, and go after it. So a lot of it, just like traditional wholesalers, it really is about planning and doing your homework. In this case, you need to identify either the location or the vehicle and then match them up to the right place at the right time. I think that's one of the challenges. Obviously we have some tools to help with that. But I think knowing what's going on in a given region, knowing which cars are selling the fastest right now makes a big difference. For a dealer to turn a car in 30 days versus 60 days, that's important.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to talk specifically about some of your services, because I would be curious to hear, what is your service that actually does that?
So we actually, and I mentioned the demand index is a good example. The demand index actually assigns a score to a vehicle for a given area. So in this case, if I'm looking at, say, 2009 Passat, I can actually, through the app, look at different areas and see how fast they're selling in different areas. So in this case, say we're in Georgia, it's not the best car in the world to move, but in, say California it is. That's an extreme example, but probably a good example would be all-wheel drive versus non-all-wheel drive. If you're trying to sell an all-wheel drive in Florida, you're not getting the same dollars you will in West Virginia. But you don't know what the turn rate is on that. And again, to market to those areas, you have to start to leverage those non-traditional networks.
So one of the things, just before the interview, I kind of went to your site and was looking at some of the various services you guys offer. One of the things that occurred to me was there's probably, since you guys are, collecting all this data, there's got to be some stats that sort of stand out to you. And, maybe if the dealers just knew these stats, it could really help them. And a couple of examples is like, what are the best areas? Where are people getting the most for cars? Southern California is a big market. I'd just be curious to know if there wasn't some standout markets that prices are very depressed and prices are very elevated.
Well, in all honesty, you can pick out number one and the last, but every region has their standout units. That's where we try to help and partner with dealers, both individually and through our various software. To find out what's hitting in each region, allow them to branch out a little bit. An S550 may be, a 4MATIC S550 Benz may be doing great in Pennsylvania. It's doing terribly in Florida. Time of year, seasonality. This is where, the way I say it is, we have an editorial team of guys who do all the work that a dealer would if he had the time. So they're doing the homework to help figure out what is and what isn't at any given moment. But you know, we've been through some turbulent times the past couple of years with it. Now I think it's stabilizing as a whole, and to be honest, it is a pretty wild picture, and we should probably develop a map for one of these next articles to actually show which vehicles are hitting the most in each area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think that would be just good information for dealers to have, and certainly with the data you have, you could probably supply something like that. So let's talk specifically about Black Book. Maybe you can just give us the 2-minute elevator pitch on what you guys do and highlight some of the actual services that you offer.
Well, really at a high-level overview, what are we doing as a whole? We're basically trying to provide insight versus information. So in this case, you know, it's all well and good to know what the price of a car is, but what can I do with it? Where can I do that? And how can I do it faster? You know, as I like to say, we didn't invent the calculator. We just made it so that you could use it faster. The ability to do things on the fly when you're out and about and leverage that in real time, that's kind of the biggest, I think, boon to dealers in the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. For us, you know, in the mobile space, an example is when I am at auction, I can pull up in and I will have literally 10 to 15 pages of information about that vehicle. Everything from specs on the car to trending on that type of vehicle versus other segments, you know, wholesale, retail, trade-in values, you know, and I can do this all the way back to 1981's vehicles. That's an amazing amount of information to have at your disposal. Mm-hmm. On the go, to have that's like having the biggest automotive library in your pocket.
Yeah, sure. I'm curious, how do you guys collect your data and keep all of your information fresh?
Well, you know, it's a combination. I already mentioned the editorial swing on it, and that's one of our secret sauces. You know, we've got experts in this space that are constantly reviewing transaction data from upstream sales, auctions, a variety of sources that way. You know, really probably the simplest way of saying it is that we have a tremendous amount of transactional data that comes in. We call it, we filter it. You know, again, there's always garbage in, garbage out when you're looking at data. That'll skew the averages. And we're making adjustments to it on a daily basis. Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you could give us one last tip before we go. With all of this information, it won't be long before essentially every dealer that's at auction has this app and is using this information. When that happens, and it's probably already happening at certain auctions, how can you get ahead of the competition? What's sort of the next step, one step ahead once everybody has access to all of this great data?
Well, I think some of where we're going is communication. Team communication from the field to the home base, but also, you know, aiding in doing that homework ahead of time, because, you know, you never want those auction buys to be an impulse buy or a passion buy. Mm-hmm. You know, auctions were built on emotion, and when you're able to take that emotion out of the game and come into it with a clear, you know, concise plan on your day, you're going to come out ahead. So that's probably the biggest thing. For us, we're constantly looking for efficiency, but sometimes efficiency is not the most utilitarian aspect of any design. A good example, you know, in this case is, you know, when you're at auction, now every app has a VIN scanner on it. Well, you have 8 different guys trying to scan one VIN. They're bumping into each other. The car's moving. That's not only a dangerous prospect, but it's also a bit cumbersome, and by the time you get your information, you may have missed the vehicle completely, given they average 40 seconds. Mm-hmm. So in this case, we're looking at opportunities there where we can mimic the information that you would get scanning the vehicle coming in. So run lists are a big part of that. Having that information and being able to schedule out your day ahead of time and comparatively shop for vehicles, that's going to be a big one.
Yeah, that's a great tip for sure. So, Mike, this has been really informative. I appreciate your coming on the show. What's the best way for people to keep up with you and potentially contact you if they want to learn more about your service?
Definitely go to blackbookauto.com. We've got
Okay.
good information there, and all the contacts are on there. We'd love to hear from everyone.
Perfect. I will link that up in the show notes. Once again, Mike, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate this. This has been very, very informative.
Well, thanks for your time.
If you're currently looking for a high-quality auto dealer website, check out our sister site, motorcarsites.com. We offer high-quality auto dealer websites at a very affordable price. Dealers can typically save between $50 and $150 per month by using our service. You can upload as many cars as you'd like at no additional cost. We automatically can export your cars to all the major platforms like Cars.com and AutoTrader, so you don't have to manage your inventory in multiple locations. We can have your new website up and running usually in less than 24 hours. Setup is free and easy, and there's no long-term contracts. Check out motorcarsites.com to learn more. On the next episode of the Motorcar Marketing Podcast, I'm going to be talking with Glenn Pash. Glenn is the CEO over at PCG Digital Marketing, and they offer a variety of marketing services to auto dealers. We're going to be talking about leadership in automotive dealerships. PCG Digital Marketing offers a host of training services to all the different positions in an auto dealership, so we'll be discussing the various training materials as well as offering up some specific advice for pretty much every position in an auto dealership. So keep an eye out for that in the next episode. That's our show. I hope you got some value out of it and can help you grow your business. Thank you for listening.